not trying to get arrests, then obviously you want to make it like nice and light and breezy. Do you see what I mean? And obviously for people that don't want to get arrested, that's good. But there's great benefits to getting arrested because, as you know, you get publicity for it. So if you've got 20 of you or 100 of you, then you can go and, you know, sit in the road like they did on the Brooklyn Bridge in New York, right? And they got 70 arrests done, and, you know, people stop listening to you. So, you know, with the arrest situation, again, in my view, it's good to go and tell the police so that you know that you're not opposed to them and you're not opposed to the general public, you're opposed to government policy. And then you go and sit in the road, and if you're respectful and non-violent and have done the training, so obviously everyone should know about doing non-violence training, then the likelihood is then the police don't, in my view, don't particularly, it's not like they want to be violent just for the sake of it. They'll be violent if they're provoked, but if some old lady is sitting in the road in a peaceful way, I would say that the likelihood is that they're not going to speak French, probably just going to get it up. And yeah, so you know that's a broad outline. And what we do when we have actions is we have a checklist. So we need someone to talk to the police. We have someone who's a legal observer. So if someone does get beaten up or something, then you've got some evidence to sue the police or whatever in case that happens. You've got welfare people to make sure everyone's happy and they've got their sandwiches and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got stewards to show people where to go. And you've got the press team to talk to the press. And you've got the logistics guys to work out where to go. Do you see what I mean? So you just need to create a checklist. And if you want that checklist, we can give it to you. And let's say if you email me, I can put you in touch with Liam, and he's got like a 20-page manual about how to do direct actions. And obviously you can adapt that to your own circumstances and what have you. So, yeah, and then you become professional rebels.
Yeah. Questions?
Maybe related to that, what sort of communication channels do you use to organize?
You mean internally or externally?
Internally, for organizing such things.
What we generally do is we have like an action strategy team in London, and that's mainly experienced activists. And we it's a bit like assessing applications. So people have the idea of an action, and then we try to put it into some sort of strategic sense of it. You see what I mean? So you don't want little actions happening when you want everyone in London. Do you see what I mean? And then the next step is to create an action project team. So the action project team is basically like the management team for that action. So that's like maybe 8 or 10 people, and each of those people have like a role. You know, like one person's on regenerative culture, you know, making people okay. One person's on police liaison. One person's on action design. So they meet every week, and then you'll have 2 or 3 people doing recruitment. So you'll be on your social media saying, you know, we're going to the capital city on this date. We're going to meet at this museum, and then we're going to go and sit on the road. You know, a general description of it. So those people meet each week, and then as the action becomes more complicated and involves more people, then they split it into subgroups. So it might be a subgroup looking at relations with the police, a subgroup looking at the press and the media, another subgroup looking at transport, you know, getting people in from small towns into the capital, and such like. And then those people sort of communicate each week. So I'm sure you're familiar with that sort of general design. And so those small groups are what's called semi-autonomous. I mean, they can't do exactly what they like, but no one's going to start micromanaging them. You know, they basically get on with the job. And then they will facilitate the creation of what's called affinity groups. They might have non-violent direct action trainings around the country. And at the end of the training, to show you how to be non-violent or what have you, then people will be asked if they want to form an affinity group. So I don't know if you're familiar with that word, but that basically means like 8 to 10 people that support each other when they're going to go and break the law. So you're not on your own. It's not so scary. You can support each other. Share your sandwiches, all that sort of thing. Go to the pub. Get to know each other. Blah blah blah. And so you might. In the UK actions, basically we have a subgroup that basically organises the affinity groups. So they'll ring all the affinity groups up and they'll say, do you want to come and block London, on this date? And they'll say yes or no or maybe. And they'll say, right, before the April Rebellion, we had a whole group like organising affinity groups. So they'd come to the big action meeting and they'd say, right, we've got 120 affinity groups coming to London and we've got 800 people who have signed up to break the law. So that's really good data because it enables you to predict how big an action you can do. You see? So as I said, if you want to know more details about that, I can put you in touch with Leo. But at the end of the day, it's like a project, like anything else, like going on holiday, building a house, it's just a project.
I have another question. So at one point, Extinction Rebellion went global, international. And how does this work? In what way are you now connected to, for example, Extinction Rebellion France? And did people sign up and now completely work for themselves? You just give them the tools and materials, or if you could explain a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think you all have to do written exams before you can join. Did no one tell you that? I hope you're all taking notes. Don't just let anyone in. So, well, the short answer is it's a little bit messy, right? Because, we're just imperfect human beings and, there's a lot it's a complicated business, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you want to coordinate everyone in order to have maximise effectiveness. On the other hand, you don't want British imperialists wandering around Europe, telling everyone, stand to attention. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So it's a little bit tricky, and definitely tricky when you want to start involving the global south, because obviously there's loads of colonial sensitivities and what have you. So I think the answer to your question is we're sort of finding our way. But there is two basic principles that we're trying to work around. One is that we have 10 fundamental principles about how we work, right? Which are, we're non-violent, we believe in people being respectful towards each other, we try and learn from our mistakes, we have a regenerative culture, so people are supported, and what have you. So if a group in a country wants to join Extinction Rebellion, there's a certain amount of formality that they need to agree to those principles. So that's the first thing. We can't have people going off, telling each other their shits or something. Do you see what I mean? That's not really the idea. So, and then the other principle is the autonomy principle. So that's why I'm not telling you what date you've got to go to the capital city. Do you see what I mean? I'm just giving you some pointers, and you're autonomous to decide how to deal with your government, because you know best, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just giving you a few general principles. So between those two principles, obviously there's plenty of room for disagreement. And I think there's a gathering, isn't there, in Germany in about a week or so. So I think some of these ideas are going to be fleshed out and get a little bit more precise. And then we're looking at having some international decision-making structure, which, is a little bit tricky, but at the end of the day is probably necessary. And then we're looking at having trainings, mentorings, and people like me talking to people. And I think a general principle that we've sort of decided on is this notion of alliance of the willing. So, instead of saying the European rebellion will be in October, and you guys getting really upset because you want to do November. Basically, the alliance of the willing principle is like the post-consensus principle, which is, you know, if France and Germany want to do their rebellion in September and you want to do it in October, then at the end of the day, that's the way it is. You see what I mean? So it's not like someone's going to force anyone to do anything. All we can do is use the argument that it's best to coordinate stuff. So I think in this gathering in Germany, I think most countries are going to decide to do a rebellion in October, or at least in late September. And that'd be fantastic, of course, because it'll be international. And instead of you just being, you know, your little country and all that stuff, you'll be going, hey, you know, we're doing stuff with London and isn't that exciting? And, you know, so, yeah.
How do you talk to people? How do you present the whole thing to them? Like, do you scare them, or like, how do you like appeal to emotions, present the facts?
I was going to make a joke of saying, you know, you should get them in a corner and strangle them or something. It's quite effective. But, yeah. But assuming you don't want to use physical force, then I can only, you know, I'm a researcher, so I can give you a technical answer, but it is a social scientific question, as you know, may be aware of how you persuade people to change their political views, right? So, you know, there's lots of different views on it. But my understanding of the social science on this is that if you say to people, you know, terrible things are going to happen, then some people respond positively to that because they think, yeah, I'm going to have to do something. But other people obviously depressed by it, right? And they're going to be put off, you know, like, oh, it's terrible, I'm not going to do anything. So, like with a lot of things in social systems, like you have people going one way and people going the other way at the same time, right? So this is how you become more sophisticated in your analysis. It's not like everyone's put off, and it's not like everyone suddenly decides to do something. But what we've developed with this talk is there's another principle, which is if people are like shitting themselves about climate change, that's sort of good because they're thinking about it. But they're only going to take action if there's what's called a pathway to action. So a pathway to action means something concrete they can do almost immediately. So, for instance, if you go out to a town in Civilne, you know, and you say, we're all fucked, you know, like terrible things are going to happen. And at the end of the talk, it's like everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's really terrible. You can predict with some certainty that nothing's going to happen because there's nothing for them to do. Do you see what I mean? So there's no point like telling people the truth unless you give them a pathway to credible action. So this is potentially why civil disobedience is very powerful in a climate change context. Because if you're going to tell people, you know, terrible things are going to happen, Slednje is going to, you know, have no water because the glaciers are going to melt and it's going to be a desert in Italy and all the rest of it, right? Obviously, they're going to be shitting themselves. And then you say to them, and the only way this is going to change is through mass participation in civil disobedience. It becomes credible because it's such a terrible thing. If you say to people like Greenpeace do or something and say, you know, terrible things are going to happen, and please sign this petition, then it's not credible, right? Because a petition is great if you want to pick up litter in your park, right? That's cool. But a petition is not going to bring down the government and create a new carbon neutral regime, right? Everyone knows that. So the name of the game with this talk is to say everything's fucked and we should be shitting ourselves. That's number one. Number two, mass participation in civil disobedience is the most effective way of bringing about change, just the way it is. Number three is on June the 17th, we are going to go into the capital of Slovenia, and the meeting is happening next Tuesday at 7 o'clock in your local town hall. So you have to give that specific information, okay? If you just say, hey, there's a meeting at some point, by the time they've got home and they've put their kids to bed and they're worrying about paying the rent, they've forgotten, right? They've forgotten there's a meeting next week. So you have to get their details, text them, phone them up, email them, whatever turns them on, and then they're likely to turn up. And then, as always, the golden secret of mobilisation. Does everyone know what that is? Does everyone know the golden secret of mobilisation?
No. Tell us, please.
It's to have biscuits on the table. Okay. Have you got biscuits on your table?
Yeah.
You're in. You can join Extinction Rebellion. That's the name. Well done. You're going to be leaders in Europe. I know it. I'm really enthusiastic about it. When I talked to the Turkish guys, they didn't have biscuits on the table. Well ahead of Turkey. Okay?
Thank you so much, Roger.
Is that it then?
Yeah, it's getting pretty late and
That's
really...
probably enough. Yeah.
Another quick question, if you have 5 more minutes to spare.
Yeah. Last question there.
So just to conclude, maybe to look ahead a little bit, and I'm really curious as to what would be maybe your kind of in your heads and best case scenario for the next 5 years on how the civil disobedience actually manifests in real systemic change, and what is systemic change to you?
That's a nice quick question. Well, I should say that my specialism is how to get people to do things and mobilise, right? So it's a little bit above my pay grade, really, to be saying exactly what should be happening, where, when, and how. I think how political change happens, as I said, is, and this comes back to the importance of Slovenia, and I do mean it seriously, is small countries can bring about quite dramatic change, and it does have a demonstration effect on the other countries. So that's quite possible. And what I mean by structural change is, I guess, when a country commits itself to being carbon neutral within 5 or 6 years. And what that means, I guess, is insulating all the houses, getting rid of petrol vehicles, massive investment in the infrastructure of solar panels and wind technology, reducing consumerism, taxing the rich so you can pay for it properly, and basically causing a big shitstorm, really, in the international system, because you can guarantee if you do it, lots of people won't want you to succeed, right? So that's why everyone in Europe needs to work together on this agenda. So ideally, if you do it, then 2 months later there'll be big changes in Germany or France or the UK. And I think if there's big changes in one of those 3 big countries, then obviously lots of changes will start happening in the other countries. So and I think it's really likely, just to end on a positive note, right? I think it's extremely likely, because generally speaking, people don't want to have their lives destroyed. There's not a lot of evidence for people going to their deaths without resistance. So, I think you've just got to focus on getting that message out and getting a critical mass. And I think it might be useful, and we might talk about this in Germany, about making demands of several countries all at the same time, or making demands of the EU, and having a big demonstration in Strasbourg and closing down Strasbourg. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So I think that would be cool. And and making it clear that the whole of Europe has to change at once. And that would obviously empower the smaller countries because everyone could go, well, maybe everyone should go to Paris, you know what I mean? And support the French. Because they're really good at this sort of thing, apparently. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers it. I mean, as you know, there are think tanks and there's experts around the world that are looking at zero emission sort of trajectories by 2025, and massive transformations in the economy, and yeah, so they can give you more details. Yeah, so thank you very much. And is anyone going to go to Germany?
We will check this out and send maybe some delegates.
Switzerland.
Ja, wiem.
Yeah, thank you. We will
I think you should, as the leading country in Europe. And you can share your wisdom with all these